Okay, so I need to discuss John Besh because my connection with John Besh seems to be intertwining with everything that's been going on over the last several years for multiple reasons. But the most important ones right now would be that, one, I caught the John Besh Restaurant Group in my hacked into my Google accounts, my Google Drive, which is where I was, would store all my recipes and all this kind of stuff. I found them as recently as 2018, 2019, when I finally was able to kick them, all the managers that were into my account, off. Although I still don't know if they still have access in a secret way. But when I was at Luke in San Antonio, I had developed a training manual for the Luke San Antonio location that apparently was being used at the Nashville restaurants as well. It was really thorough, and it was a good training packet. And but I didn't know that they were still using it and still and making adjustments and making amendments to it. But that was the basically the foundation for their training packet program for the company. And of course, I wasn't being compensated for any of it. Even when I was doing it, when I originally made it, I was never compensated for it. It was just something I did because I was asked to do. I was willing to do anything for those motherfuckers because that's what were my heroes. So there's that, and of course with this whole cooking system that I've developed, it's potentially worth billions of dollars, literally, because of all the different applications it lends itself to, including military applications and even NASA, manned space travel and stuff like that. And it's very, very revolutionary. It has the potential, literally being worth a lot of money. And I've even, tried attempting to contact Fabio Montia and John Besh personally to try to, see if they would give me some guidance on what happened. They would never return my phone calls. Now, another thing, throughout this whole ordeal, like I said, last week I was able to prove that people were trying to frame me and set me up, and that my criminal records have been modified. All of a sudden it just dawned on me because some of the, I guess, police men and agents that have been, harassing me online, have been, constantly accusing me of being a drug dealer. And, knowing what I know now, well, obviously they probably would assume that just because of my connections to with my family and the connections to the drug trafficking and the sex trafficking. And obviously, I do know of, some relatives that definitely were into that business. Personally, I wasn't. I didn't, realize that it was a family business until just recently, But it dawned on me today that back in 2014, when I was asked to leave the BRG, what had happened was that I eventually becoming John Besh's personal chef at his duck hunting lodge in Slidell, Louisiana. My contact there, his name is Corey, and these are some good old boys, to say the least. And there was a lot of ties to the KKK over there, and it's just because I'm recording it, and for what we said verbatim. But by all means, I don't believe in any of this, and I don't condone it at all either. But whenever it was the crew of Rex, and so it was just them and their sons, and very, very bonding kind of experience. And it was every weekend during the fall of 2014. And whenever they would take a picture, just a regular picture, instead of saying cheese, they would say "nigger pussy." And even the kids, it was just like, oh my fucking god, course, I wasn't gonna say anything about it because I was trying to trying to work my way up, and then of course they were by the end of it all they were saying, okay, so you're ready to start having your name on the lights, your name in the lights and on the signs, because I mean they were I hit it off with them really really well, and aside from the whole fucking tied to the close family, they were pretty cool guys, but anyway, the last weekend I was employed with the ARG, I was like I said, I was the cook there at the Cunning Lodge, and afterwards, after I cooked dinner and everything like that, then we'd all stay up drinking, until like the wee hours in the morning, until about 4 or 5, and then of course an hour and a half later they'd have to get up and get ready to go again in the morning. So they'd got me real fucked up on like moonshine and shit like that, and I'd gotten to bed about 5 in the morning, and at 6 in the morning, the breakfast cook showed up. Because they had this one girl that was a breakfast cook there, and so she handled breakfast, I handled lunch and dinner. Well, this girl had a history of heroin use, and apparently she fell off the wagon, and so she wakes me up, fucking all strung out, and she's asking for help, and I'm like, dude, I was like, I'm fucked up myself. I was like, I can't. She's like begging me, and I was like, and she could barely even stand, so. I made the mistake of saying, okay, fine, I'll try to help you out. So, one thing that happened after another, and this bitch winds up taking a fucking face plant, like as she's cooking eggs. Boom, and it was a disaster. And this is like, some of the richest people in fucking New Orleans. In Louisiana. This is the crew of Rex. This is the old money in New Orleans. Louisiana. So it was a very, very embarrassing incident. And I was asked to take responsibility for it and asked to resign from the company as a show of something being done about it, and that I would be able to come back at a later date. There was a few times that shit like that happened with other employees with the BRG, that we took the fall for something that it wasn't necessarily our fault, and they were known affectionately as the besh disciples. That was the day I became a besh disciple. I took the blame for it and resigned. What I didn't know at the time, though, was that the girl's story after she woke up from being passed out was that she said that I sold her the heroin. I've never done heroin in my life. I'm allergic to opiates. Never tried drugs in my life. I was a user, but I was never a dealer. It was really fucking bad time because I was like super fucking depressed about, I'd made it all the way to becoming, my hero's fucking personal chef, and then being asked to leave, and that's something I probably did, but I did not know that the narrative was going to be that I was the heroin dealer. And apparently that fucking rumor got back to the BRG and spread like wildfire amongst the employees, and it was really weird because nobody fucking backed me up. If I'd been, I was always fucking broke except for those last few months when I was making good money, doing the catering. But if I was a heroin dealer, I would have been a lot better off than I was. And I was working for fucking 10-50 an hour, busting my ass, and nobody backed me up. Everybody just spread the rumor. Now, coming back to present day, apparently the BRG, is some of these employees, my former friends, teammates, have been interviewed by certain agencies to try to while they've been conducting their investigation, because obviously I'm associated with bad people and bad things, and beyond my family. associates and stuff like that. And I mean, that's the whole reason why I left, landscape branch, was because I found out some stuff was going on. I didn't know it, and I didn't want to be associated with it, and I lost my ass on that deal, and that's when I went to New Orleans. And then, of course, I realized that, beyond just, not just with the sex trafficking that was being done on that unique makeup page that my mother had put on my Facebook while I was in a coma. I've got to also say, on that particular subject, that I remember who hit me in the head. It wasn't a fall. It was the other person who was in the house with me that day. My brother. And we got in a fight that night. We've never been physical with each other. I mean, sometimes we stood up, to each other, reared up, but we never ever been in a physical fight. There was one night when we were drunk, and we had a wrestling match where it got a little out of hand, but it wasn't out of anger or anything like that. It was just that we were both really fucked up, and I cracked a couple of my ribs, and I broke his finger. But I mean, that was like play fighting. That wasn't a real fight. We've never been in a real fight like that. Yeah. Anyway, so over the last year or so, I've realized that my family was doing business also with the Besh restaurant group. They were connected through that. They were an extension of this whole sex trafficking ring. And my mother, just like always, had become friends with, my bosses, Ryan Katz and stuff like that, and they talked on their own, communicated on their own. I didn't realize that, that not only were they, running a trafficking operation, but they were also, human trafficking operation, but it also had to do with drugs. And so that incident with me leaving the BRG and that whole duck hunting lodge, it was actually a setup. It was pre-planned. Now, the next part is going to sound a little hard to believe, but I've already established enough of a history of facts that what I'm saying is not crazy. What I'm saying is I can back up and I can prove. And I haven't mentioned this part because it's pretty fucking outrageous. But at this point, as the I guess obvious witch hunt or campaign to try to frame me for things is definitely going full swing, and the fact that these guys are getting desperate, and I've already established enough of a history of being able to back up my claims. The Besh Restaurant Group is a front for Russian espionage and Chinese espionage as well. It's part of this whole plan that's been going on for at least 20 years, from what I can tell, between Russia and China, plotting to the demise of America, and that's why the whole terror plot is tied to this. I mean, the terror plot is real, and now that I've been able to, as I've learned more, then the more I realize that my memory is going, oh shit, that's what was going on when that happened, or that so the puzzle is becoming clearer and clearer, and it's becoming quicker and quicker to solve it. But John Besh had this whole internship program that if you for the chefs, like where you would go tour Europe and Germany and shit like that. That was part of the whole espionage operation. That's like where whoever was chosen for that trip, that's where they would go and basically get trained for terrorist activity and shit like that. One of my good friends was on that tour, named Eric Luce or Eric, something like that. It's part of that was a cover for them going over there to be trained as an operative. There was a John Besh, had like a foreign exchange program where bring over exchange students that were already trained spies over to work at the BRG and intern, but it was actually an espionage operation. There was definitely a couple of Russians and Chinese employees there that I can name brought into. I don't want to cause anything too much destruction. I don't want to cause too much of a chaos right now. It's more the details that should be left for law enforcement. And I know that, for example, when I was the Landscape Rats, I dated a girl named Tatiana Oshanagova, who I'm quite certain is now, I'm now quite certain was a Russian spy as well. She was an interior decorator. I was introduced to her by Eric, and I did report her name to the police. Obviously, a lot of my police reports were never getting filed. So that was one, Russian spy that I know I've dated, and then of course my girlfriend from Luke, Tara. She's also tied to this, not only trafficking but the espionage as well. The reason we had broken up was because she went to go spend, supposedly went to go spend some time in Australia and New Zealand and shit like that for becoming a yoga teacher. But she was making connections for this whole sex trafficking trade and the money laundering operation because Australia is a good place to hold your money that you launder because of the less restrictions over there. I don't know the whole fucking details, but that's from what I gather. That's why a lot of the monies in these operations are held in Australia. So basically, the Chinese are the ones that wash it, and are in charge of the washing, and then the Australians, New Zealanders are in charge of the storing the money, and then of course the Mexicans and the Russians are the ones who are basically, the movers of whatever product or whatever that earns the money that's washed. So. I've suspected over the last year or so that not only were members of my family not only involved with the trafficking operations, but were also involved with espionage as well. My father's job, perfect job for a fucking person, for a spy, because he had, his last big project before he retired was completing the PSJ School District's police department, which would then give him, and everybody wanted the PSJ's contracts in business because it was one of the largest school districts in the nation, so they spent a lot of fucking money, which means that my dad had people wanting to do favors for him all over the fucking place. And just the other day, something came up with one of my dad's associates and favors and shit like that. Like during the summer, my father had a friend whose name is Mr. Valdez. And he would let us borrow his condo there at the island, for a week or so during the summer when they had their summer vacation. We spent the week over there at the island. And the other day on Chatterbait, I recognized one of the guys from the DPS that was involved with my arrest, the false arrest. He was obviously pretending to be a girl, but the decorations and the backdrop of the room that he was broadcasting from, I recognized that there was a pineapple lamp, and Mrs. Valdez apparently had this big thing about pineapple. She collected everything pineapple, so that condo was decorated to the fucking brim with all pineapple shit. So I recognized that lamp, and then I recognized the bed and the kind of setup. So I mentioned it out loud, but so I don't know if who was listening to me at the time, but I've often suspected and have been proven correct that like my mother and my brother have been basically taking tips that I've been trying to pass along to law enforcement they've been, either intercepting the emails or intercepting my phone calls, and then taking those tips and passing them on, as their own discovery, and taking whatever kind of credit or rewards for those tips. And also buying them more credibility as a good, honest American. But yeah, so those kinds of connections are involved with us, not only from the sex trafficking aspect, but from the drug trafficking aspect, as well as possible terror, or espionage. Because if you have the connections to, my father, oversaw the entire purchase of everything that went into that police department, which means that he had access to any kind of surveillance equipment that any other police agency would have across America, including like the NYPD, including the LAPD, including tools like from the FBI as well, because which would be access to PRISM, the missing surveillance program, access to Hammer, access to Stingray drones, and of course also with BSJ having a big ROTC population, and of course Chemo Palacios, my mother's